It's not the house that's haunted. It's your son.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
What is up, my spooky people? Welcome back to another episode of Slashers in Sync. I teased this episode last week and I'm super happy to discussing this. So check this out. Michael Myers versus Jason Voorhees. In this showdown, we'll break down not only their strength, but also dive into the darker aspects of their character narratives, from Michael's relentless and just emotionless pursuit in the Halloween franchise to Jason's unstoppable vengeance in Friday the 13th. We'll explore what makes each of them terrifying and who will come out on top in a sheer battle. So joining me as always is the lovely, marvelous. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Better.
You-
Sorry about last week.
Yeah.
Oops.
And if you guys didn't watch last week's episode, it was me talking about the Slumber Party Massacre series.
Mm-hmm.
For the foreseeable future, I think I'll probably just do those on my own.
I have not seen those movies.
Yeah, and then whenever Marva watches them, she can go and kind of do reels or TikToks.
Yeah, give my thoughts.
Yeah.
From what I heard in the background noises, they were interesting.
Yeah, very out of here.
Yeah.
But I mean, speaking of 80s, right? Like, I feel like
Yeah.
Jason Voorhees embodies that. Like,
Yeah.
we're talking about a franchise that was coming out like 1 to every 2 years in the 80s.
In the 80s,
just
yeah.
like back to back. Like
Continuously.
they were shooting them out, man. Jason was the 80s, and some people would say that I guess Jason Voorhees and the Friday the 13th franchise is almost like a playoff of Halloween, because even though Halloween wasn't the first slasher,
Mm-hmm.
78's Halloween did, I feel, ignite the slasher genre in,
Definitely.
you know, the 80s. I
Yeah.
feel a lot, like, when you think of a guy in a white mask and a suit, which is what majority of people use when they're in slasher flicks, that dates back to Michael.
Michael, and it kind of like ricochets on, like you said, into other films. I guess the only one that doesn't really count is Nightmare on Elm Street, because Freddy doesn't have
Yeah.
a white mask. But
Yeah.
even like
And it doesn't even have-
Pinhead has like a white face with a suit. Sure, it's not a mask, but he's like pale as fuck.
And you don't even it doesn't even have to be a white mask. I mean, look at I forget the name of the movie, but like Totally Killer or like
Mhm.
Happy Death Day. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, they're more extravagant masks,
Masks.
but it's a mask with
With
a
a
or like
hooded-
a suit or like a
or
hood.
the
Like,
suit
it's very
of
like,
sort.
you know, just that's what Michael represented, and that's what the 80s and 90s, 2000s, and even now
Yeah.
have taken upon of. And it's
I kind of want to figure out whether or not I don't think Michael Myers is the first one to embody that type of. I wouldn't think so anyway, but if he
Mm.
is, that's really fucking cool. Like that type of killer, if you will. I feel like it has to be like based somewhere else, and then it got revived through Michael. And
we
now,
know Cycle was what, in the 60s?
I think
and
that was either in the 50s
slasher.
or 60s. Yeah, but was
So-
there a masked killer in that one?
I don't remember, but I do know there's another slasher that's even just as old, if not maybe a little bit older than that.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, the slasher genre definitely wasn't created by Michael. So maybe there is a movie out there where there was a killer with a mask
Yeah,
and a
but
suit
it
before
depends on, like,
Michael.
what kind of mask.
Yeah.
But I guess Michael popularized it and catapulted a whole like franchise to really boom, if you will, for the next
Right.
like 2 to 3 decades.
Yeah, because I mean, I think there's a direct quote out there where like people were capitalizing on Michael's success. They're just like, well, let's bring Michael
Just fuck
back.
it,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's the one. Like,
Yeah.
and that's where like Halloween 4, 5, and 6 come into play in the
Mhm.
80s. So it's like very, you know, just there.
Yeah.
So this versus battle is interesting. I've always wanted to do it, and for the people who may recognize me from MJTV, I'm known for doing versus battles. But keep in
Way
mind,
back when.
yeah, way back when. But keep in mind, we're not gonna go like
Deep.
super in depth. We're not gonna be scaling like
I'm not here.
destructive
Yeah.
capabilities. Like, we're not doing numbers. This is just gonna be
We're
a
not going to be
fun-
quoting like timestamps of the movies either.
Yeah, this
Like-
is just a fun discussion of these two characters from two
Yeah.
people who have seen the franchises
Multiple occasions.
Multiple occasions.
Yeah.
And just for the people who are aware, we're going to be breaking this down into sections. So Marva and I have discussed this multiple times, and we've come up with this idea. So the first section is going to be Jason Voorhees versus Michael Myers from Halloween 78, and perhaps if you want to do Halloween 2 as well back then. And Friday the 13th, Human Jason versus Jason 2 all the way to 4.
Yep.
Then we're going to break down Jason versus Michael, remake and requels. And then we're going to break down Jason versus Michael, Zombie Jason, and Curse of Thorn Michael.
Almost like supernatural versions of these, excuse me, icons.
Yeah. Keep in mind, guys, Marva is returning from an illness. So, you know.
Yeah, that's why my voice cracked back there. Sorry. Again, sorry.
But I guess we'll go ahead and start it off with Michael, since Marva is a huge fan of Michael Myers. Halloween 2018 is actually what started her big horror jump in, along with Hereditary.
MJ fed into it too. Like,
Yeah.
let's not forget about that.
I'll let Marva talk about the character brief and then give her own little 2 cents or add in anything else that she has on Michael before I jump into Jason.
All right. So Michael Myers is a character created by John Carpenter for his film Halloween that was released in 1978. A lot of people say that this was one of the films that blew the slasher genre into unseen heights that reached in the 80s and onwards, something that we talked about earlier.
Right.
Even Michael's design, a mask with an all-black fit or like a dark-colored fit, is almost immortalized with what people assume to be a slasher. So essentially, like, we see it throughout the next few decades, like even in today's day and age. Not just that, but Michael's character has always been debated specifically on what he is. Is he human or is he supernatural? Like, the franchise in the movie seems to teeter back and forth between calling him and calling him it.
Both in the movies and also outside of movies with directors and interviews.
I think, what was it? The first time I watched Halloween 78, you made me take note of the fact that they didn't call Michael Myers in the credits. They called him The Shape.
Yeah.
Which was like pretty interesting to me.
Yeah.
So that question still rings through the franchise and even amongst producers and like crew members and things along those lines. So it's based off of your interpretation. But there have been multiple variations of Michael's from the different directors and films and franchises. But one thing has stayed true. He's an unstoppable force. John Carpenter had this to say about Michael's character when it came to on board for the first recent trilogy created by Green, so the most recent trilogy made. And
they all worked pretty like hand in hand. I think by the third movie, Carpenter had kind of like belled out a little bit. He still did the score, but
by ends?
Yeah.
I thought he had say in the script, but they decided to follow through with how the script came to life.
I just remember like him supposedly not being as like he wasn't a part of the process of ends as much as he was
the first two,
from what I remember. So.
That yes and no for me. I feel like from what I remember, he wasn't as involved as the other two, but he was still involved enough, because I remember a lot of people were bashing on ends when it first came out. But the counter argument was that this was Carpenter's like vision of how Michael should be if we were to continue to tell his story. Yeah,
I think he still green lights the Green trilogy, no pun intended,
overall.
And we do know that he did do the score for
all of them. But essentially the quote that John gives out is this, which is, Michael Myers is not a character. He is a force of nature. He's not a person, part supernatural, part human. He is like the wind, an evil wind.
I like that quote. I know. That little line.
He quite literally is a force. If you start straying away from that and you get into explaining, then you've lost. So hopefully we can guide it back to the original direction. A literal quote from John Carpenter.
And that kind of implies that this was his mindset back in the 70s then, because he says, let's go back to that, it kind of had changed over time. Like them doing the Curse of Thorn trilogy, that kind of explained why Michael was the way he was.
Or even having Laurie being Michael's sister, that makes it more like human ties to the people that he's hunting and going after, the person that he's quote unquote obsessing over. But then you have 2018 and even Kills, where they say like, hey, he wasn't coming after you. The doctor just kind of threw him at your house and said, go at it.
I mean, you even got Rob Zombie's iteration, which we love Rob Zombie in this house as far as his movies go. Yes. Anyways, so even Rob's Halloween had him showing us like Michael's home and how he came from like an abusive environment. Household. So it feels like he wanted to get away from trying to explain what Michael is and why he is that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's basically where we are. So we kind of have an idea of what John's mind was like back in the 70s.
And I guess it kind of explains why Corey plays such a huge role in Ends, because if Michael is a force and he's part supernatural, then whatever force is possessing him can jump from body to body.
There are some theories about that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Any other thoughts on Michael before I get into Jason? Like your own 2 cents on him?
He's fucking sick.
Yeah.
If I see him in an alleyway, I'm running the other direction. At the same time, I know even if I run, he'll still catch up to me just by walking. Whatever kind of like ghostly force he is or has or what be it. But low-key an obsession for a good while.
Yeah.
Still is. Love the guy. Love the mask design. Love John Carpenter for it. Honestly.
So we'll skip over to Jason. Jason Voorhees was created by Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller for the 1980 horror film Friday the 13th. Now, there's obviously a lot of debate and there's a lot of back and forth legally over the rights of Jason Voorhees and Friday the 13th, which is why it's taking so long for us to get a movie. But it all dates back to Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller, regardless of whoever you think actually created Jason. The main difference between Halloween and Friday the 13th is that Jason was not the main antagonist of the first film. His mother, Pamela, was the one seeking revenge, and we wouldn't see adult Jason on screen until the sequel. Because even though he appears in Friday the 13th, he's a little boy in the lake at the very end.
He is.
Something that definitely wasn't planned. Over the course of this iconic franchise, we've seen multiple variations of Jason, but one thing has always stayed true. He's an unstoppable force. Now, we don't have too many quotes. At least I couldn't find anything specifically that wasn't legal from Sean or from Victor about Jason. Even though they are the creators, they seem to be more focused on just the direction of the franchise and, you know, where to get their money and how to, you know, progress versus talking about the characters themselves.
Yeah.
So I did find a quote from Kane Hodder. Kane Hodder is the guy who portrayed Jason for like half of the franchise.
Yeah.
And he said this about the Jason Voorhees character during his time portraying him. There is one more rule that we didn't even know existed. And that is you never see Jason get up. You can knock him down 3 or 4 times, but you never see him get up. And he goes on to say, you don't do that because it's awkward. And not that it's just awkward, you never want to see Jason be that human. So I think that's a pretty cool quote. And that does line up around the time when Kane Hodder started playing Jason, because Jason at this point was already zombie Jason. And it makes sense that...
Interesting. Okay.
It makes sense that you wouldn't want to see a dead zombified character be too human. Which is why he does come off like a tank in a lot of the movies that we see him in.
He's just stomping around, moving from place to place. All of a sudden he's up. Versus like Michael Myers, where he's known for that iconic like sit up.
Yeah.
Almost like a zombified sit up. It's not one that you use your arms and try and sway yourself forward. He just literally pops up. And
Jason, I think, actually embodies what you brought up a little bit earlier more, is the fact that, excuse me, let me repeat that. He actually embodies what you said earlier to a greater extent, and that's the fact that you can be running full speed and he's just walking, and it's almost like he teleported to where you're at. Yeah. Which makes sense because, again, he's a zombified character that was
at least in the later parts,
brought back by lightning. So it's like we don't know what type of supernatural entity he is at this point.
He could have the speed of lightning for all we know, because he got struck by it. Not that, you know, I expect for him to look like the Flash where lightning's coming out of his legs and his ass, but yeah. One thing I will say though, and it was during your whole character brief, is that, and you and I have kind of gone back and forth in this aspect, if you will. I feel like Jason was more involved in movie 1 than most people realize. And what I mean by that is this. I think there was one time where you and I were watching the first Friday the 13th, and we took note of the fact that, and I think it was whenever the counselors were jumping into the lake or something. All I remember is somebody's moving the branches down. Yeah. And it doesn't make sense because Pamela is driving back to the camp.
She's with the hitchhiker or something.
I think so. Yeah. With one of the counselors, who's the chef. The chef was supposed to be there. So you and I kind of looked at each other and we're like, wait, how can she be in 2 places at once? And that's where you and I theorized, okay, well, this is probably Jason looking into the counselors while Pamela's driving around. But I guess one could argue that Pamela has severe dementia, so even if she knows that Jason's alive, deep down in her core, she feels like he's not.
I think you and I also kind of talked about the fact that if that was Pamela,
Yeah.
it's just a mix up on the directors and the writers for like mixing those two scenes up. But to their credit, it actually adds up that, okay, if Jason was alive, then that really was him.
Yeah.
You can retroactively go back and watch that movie and say, that's actually Jason then. That's not Pamela, which I think that's always cool. It's very similar to the Scream movie. And funny enough, we were just watching this last night. My friend Mark from KRW brought this up where there's a lot of instances where you see Ghostface.
Yep.
Like either in the bathroom, and you know that Billy and Stu are not there because Stu is with Tatum, and then Billy just got done having that conversation and went the opposite direction with Sydney. So who was in the bathroom? And then you have another instance of when Stu, Billy, and Randy are at the video store, and you have that like whole altercation there with Randy, but then there's someone stalking, you know, Sydney and Tatum in the grocery store when they're picking up food for the party.
How quickly can you move from spot to
but
spot?
So again, it may have been a mix up on Wes Craven's behalf, rest in peace. Or now that we know about Roman, you can retroactively say there was always a third Ghostface.
Roman was always close behind.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense, and it's always cool.
Yeah.
So you're right about that. It's like when you look back at it, no, that probably was Jason a lot throughout that movie. You know,
because I think you and I even sat back and were like, look, he's wearing like a flannel, and like the flannel that Pamela's wearing isn't exactly what what the arm is that's like pushing down the branches, or like the boots don't exactly match, or the shoes just almost seem too big for a woman. Like there was a lot of details that you and I were looking at, and who knows, like I have a tendency of overanalyzing a lot of things that are on screen and even in books.
Yeah.
So I may be looking into something that's not really there, but I don't want to write Jason completely off from movie one either. It's not just the lake scene that I feel like he pops up in, because he does that on multiple occasions throughout the first few movies before we finally transition to the later ones where he is zombified. It almost seems like when he's zombified, he's not coming out of the lake the way that he used to be as a kid.
It's almost like he's going into the lake.
Yeah.
Like that's the way they, I guess, defeat him is by trapping him in there, you know.
Yeah.
But, so like with all that said and done, let's go ahead and get into the fun part. And this is where we'll talk a little bit more about like their feats of strength and stuff like that. But we have Jason Voorhees versus Michael Myers from the Halloween 78 film and Friday the 13th Human Jason, which is movies, if you want to count 1 through 4 or 2 through 4 when he's on screen.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is an interesting one because this is probably the most laid back version of them. I feel like
more humanized.
They're definitely so human here.
For the most part.
Michael's still up in the air.
Michael's still 50-50. I want to say he's 50-50 right now. He's not like 70-30 or like 80-20 like how he is in the later part of the films or even in the franchise. He's very much 50-50.
So the issue with this is
the heavier side being that he's supernatural. Continue.
No, you're fine. So the interesting part of this is Jason is pretty easy to scale. Like,
okay.
And you know what I mean when I get to it. So in movies 2 and 3, we see Jason can be overpowered by other dudes. One guy particularly, I think is the boyfriend of the blonde girl in movie 2. He actually wrestles with Jason like 2 different times. And
when he still has the potato sack on his head?
Yes.
Okay.
And Jason does get the better of him, but that guy is still able to wrestle Jason down to the ground. Right. And then I believe in movie 4, Jason obviously gets somewhat killed by a little kid.
Yeah.
So there are certain instances where Jason is not as like this hulking character, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. But there's other moments where we do see him, you know, like snap a guy's neck quickly, or he even picks up one dude and lifts him off the ground. And this is still Human Jason, mind you. I think this is movie 3, the boyfriend of the brunette. And I feel like it's easy to probably scale Jason to be like a little bit above human level, but not at that supernatural level yet, I would probably imagine.
Almost like obscene strength.
Yes, like somebody who probably has the strength of like a strong man, like one of the people who compete like in the world tournaments.
Yeah.
But doesn't have the body for it, so you wouldn't expect it, but he's like around their strength level.
He's also huge. Like,
yes.
And I don't mean huge in like overweight huge. I mean, even the actor for Jason's huge. What is he, like 6'5" and at least
He's
like
6'4",
250?
yeah.
So you can tell that this, like, anytime, and I don't know if it's the camera angle or not, but anytime Jason's on screen from like 2 through 4, because that's when we really see a full body silhouette, not like peaks of like hands or feet. He's towering over the girls and at least a head taller for most of these guys. And the guys seem tall. So you know Jason's huge. Kind of like Crowley huge.
Yeah. Okay, so let me take back what I said. When I say not showing the size that you would think someone that strength would be, I'm referring to people like Brock Lesnar. Like people,
you mean like muscle mass?
Yeah, like people who are just like genetic looking freaks that got traps the size of, you know what I mean? Like
biceps.
Yeah, these are the guys who we've seen, like Brock Lesnar literally pick dudes up in one hand. And like, so he has that type of strength. It's just, I don't think
without the physique.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect it. But you're not wrong. He is tall though. Like he is like a hulking character, just not what you would expect someone that can pull a truck, you know?
Probably not, yeah.
You wouldn't expect to see somebody do that.
Not until you see him impale somebody with a tree branch. Then you'd be like, all right, cool. Maybe he can pull a truck or two.
So he is around that level.
Yeah.
But here's the issue. Michael is also similar to that level because we see him lift people up, right? In movie 1. He stabs the guy with a knife, lifts him up, right?
Yeah.
Holds him up there, you know, right?
With the knife. And you and I have talked about the amount of force it takes for you to get somebody to stay impaled on a knife, levitating on a wall. And it's not just any knife. It's not a hunting knife. It's a kitchen knife.
So are we looking at this Michael as is 78 within a vacuum? Like it's just a movie by itself? Because if you count John Carpenter's original idea of Michael, right, being supernatural, does that put him over Jason automatically? Or do you feel like Jason could still get the upper hand? You get what I'm trying to say? Because if he's...
Like if the two of them were thrown into a room, who would win?
Yes, because John himself says, let's take Michael back to the direction of old, which is his
first
78 film.
Yeah. Because too, even though John Carpenter had a hand, you and I have both talked about how he wrote the script in one night with a bunch of coke.
So it's like, if the Green Trilogy represents what Michael is, and that's supposed to be what John Carpenter's original idea of him was, does that also not make 78 Michael supernatural then, right?
That's why I said I feel like he's 50-50. So in 78, so if you and I are going to continue with the Green Trilogy being like the true story of Michael Myers, then...
At least as of now.
At least as of now. Then you and I also need to factor in this. The more he kills, the more powerful he becomes.
Yes.
78, he's only caught one body before he finally makes it out of the facility. And then after that, I think he kills either 4 or 5 other kids. So
it's like a total of 6 people, I think, that he's killed.
By the end of the movie, I would say he's probably like 65% supernatural and then like 35% human. But if we're keeping the underlying theme throughout, put both of them in a room and I feel like the two of them would hack each other up. Who would stand up first? My gut tells me Michael, just because anytime Jason would get hit during the first 4 films, he would be stunned for a good minute. Michael, however, no matter who hit him or what hit him, after maybe half a second, he would be back onto the same movement, the same grind, the same like attack.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's not necessarily who wins in strength or who wins in brutality. It's who is quicker to get on their feet. Because they're almost like... Both of them balance each other out, because I get it. Michael's supposed to be more supernatural-esque than Jason at this time. However, both of them are human enough to where you can't factor in supernatural too much yet.
It's also weird too, because Michael's constantly taking bullets, whereas I don't remember if Jason's ever shot in any of the movies where he's a human. I know he gets shot later as a zombie, but I don't remember if he gets shot in...
No, he's stabbed, hung.
Someone hits him with a machete in the head, but he stands up later.
Yeah, so I guess even if he was shot, nothing would really happen, because when you take a knife and you stab somebody in the head, usually they're stunned. He was stunned, but I mean, like, they can't move. He got up and he was still moving afterwards. So clearly there's something with him on a more biological level, if you will, to where either he doesn't feel pain or he's so enraged that the pain gets pushed off to the side.
Right, because I was actually going to bring this point up. You actually mentioned this because I told you about the gun that Laurie had in movie 2. So if we count movie 2 of Halloween, the one from 81, since that is also John Carpenter's movie.
Yeah.
If we do count that movie, the gun that Laurie had was a fucking hand cannon. If anyone else had got shot with that,
Their
like,
brains would have been
yeah,
split
like a
out.
half of their head would get blown off.
Yeah.
Right? We've seen those like in movies, old westerns. Michael takes 2 bullets straight to the eyes, and he's still swinging his knife around. And I remember making a joke about, man, that's the damn hand cannon. And you're like, damn, he must be pretty strong then.
Yeah.
And I was like, durable to be able to take that. So maybe if you want to imply logic, maybe John didn't have the ideas to flesh it fully out then, but maybe Michael was getting stronger after every kill because he killed like half of that hospital.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I feel like the reason why he was able to move, if you and I are really feeding into that theory of, hey, the more he kills, the stronger he becomes, then at that point, because in that not even one night, within the few hours of being in the hospital, he kills double the amount that he does in 78.
Yeah.
Almost. So that amplifies whatever quote unquote power he gets from killing.
Yeah.
Right? So that fear, that anxiety, that evil that he's feeding, that emanates off of him, really is able to spread the way that it needs to in order to give him the power that he wants and or needs to continue his cravings, if you will.
Right.
Because this man isn't stopped, or at least Michael isn't stopped by anything that a quote unquote normal human would be stopped by, be it like sex, drugs, a second glance, guilt, like remorse, empathy, none of it. He's constantly getting ready to hack up the next person who moves or even looks at him, even if they're not related to who he's after.
Yeah. Whereas what Jason, like you brought up earlier, when he gets stabbed with the machete or something, that's enough to keep him down for a few hours, which is kind of like what segues into the next movie. Like the main girl will stab him with the machete in the back of the head, and then
he'll be out for like 5-10 minutes, and then all of a sudden you get a jump scare of him with the machete still in his head.
And then there you go, part 2, you got to binge it next. And then it literally picks up right from where the last movie left off. Whereas with Michael, he gets shot 6 times in the chest and then he pops up and he's gone, or
exactly. Because if you want to keep it back down to 78, then even when why did I forget the therapist's name? Loomis. Yeah.
How could you? I was kidding.
I'm sorry.
I shot him 6 times.
See, he shoots him 6 times. I've had a long day at work. I apologize. But even after Loomis shoots him 6 times in movie 1, man still gets up.
He's gone.
Not even 30 seconds later.
He's gone before Loomis can even make it to the balcony.
There's no blood on the ground either. He shoots him, looks over at Laurie. He's like, "You good?" Laurie's like, sure, we'll call it good." Looks back over to the balcony, make sure Michael's still there, and Michael's not there.
Yeah.
How long is that? Maybe at most a minute?
Yeah.
If you get shot 6 times in the chest, you're going to be dragging yourself on the floor if you're human, but clearly he's not. That's why I say like it's 50-50. Because whatever it is, well, maybe a little bit more at that point because he's already killed a lot of Laurie's friends.
Yeah.
But at the same time, no one should be able to move that quickly after being shot in the chest. No human should be able to move that quickly. Let me correct myself. So at the end of the day, that's why my final answer is Michael. Not because of brute force, not because of like how cunning he is or how smart he is or how he plans things out. Because I honestly feel like he just literally goes from like, kill, all right, what's the next thing that's moving? Kill, all right, what's the next thing that's moving? Kill, right? Unfortunately, it's happened to be targeted around Laurie because, I mean, you have him stalking her for the majority of the movie because a lot of people have the headcanon that she's innocent, reminds him a lot of his sister, blonde, beautiful, right? Like shows up at his doorstep, knocks on, like puts the key under the mat, doesn't necessarily go in, but he's in there, so she has piqued his interest. However, his house is near enough to where she can walk over to the old Myers house. So her neighborhood was going to get hit regardless. It just happened to be more so focused on her because her friends were out and about doing dumb shit on Halloween night.
I was just about to ask you that. So when you brought up sheer force, you believe that even like if Jason is maybe like a little bit stronger than Michael in their human forms, that Michael is just way too durable. Like he'll be able to take whatever Jason throws at him. If
we're really sticking to what John Carpenter said, which is that he is a force, and I'm sticking to the fact that, hey, he's really only killed one person until halfway through Halloween 78, then with the way that Michael reacts after getting hit, he's going to have the hand over Jason. I don't think Jason can outmaneuver Michael in that sense. And that's huge in a fight. Because let's say you and I are in a brawl, right? And I stun you and you stun me, but I'm able to recover from that stun. Who's able to hit the other person first? Me.
Yeah, I also think for like Jason's psyche, and this is something that I wanted to talk about a little earlier in the character brief, but I forgot to, which is the fact that Jason's still very much
childlike.
And you could argue maybe for Michael too, but I don't think Michael is childlike. I just feel like he was shut off from society for so long that that's a whole other topic. But
that's more of a psychoanalysis.
Yeah. With Jason, he really is childlike.
Yeah,
so,
he'll throw tantrums. He'll cry. Like he'll swing his arms left and right. But you don't see Michael do that.
So if Jason stabs like Michael in the stomach, or if he stabs him in the shoulder, or does anything that we see him do with any of the camp counselors or teenagers, but Michael just stands there and takes it, and or is actually able to push Jason off, I feel like that's incredibly gonna fuck with him. Like
in the head,
yeah, he's not gonna understand what just happened. Sure. You know, like everyone else I've killed, what's wrong with you? You know?
What's going on? And like maybe he might rage out. Maybe he might like his I don't know, his strength will like up, because obviously when you're enraged and you're in the heat of battle, that usually like amplifies whatever strength you already have, right? That's why they call it dumb strength. Yeah. Not to say like Jason is dumb, but whenever, like even me, if I'm like heated and I'm in a fight, all of a sudden some sort of strength comes out that I didn't even know was there. Yeah. So same thing goes with Jason, but we don't know how he'll react. So let's really feed into that whole aspect of the fact that he really is childlike. If a child tries to defend themselves and they see the threat come back up, what are they going to do? They're going to shut down. Yeah. If Jason doesn't shut down and he's in shock and Michael just goes at him, then how quickly will Jason recover from that? Because he's still human. Let's say he gets stabbed in the stomach, in the chest, not in the heart, just in the chest, or in the shoulder, in the neck. Depends on where. I don't think Jason is at a point to where if he gets stabbed in the aorta, he's going to pull it out and stab Michael right away. I feel like he'll just be in complete shock. And that's when he'll probably die. Because if we go all the way to movie 4, Tommy's able to kill Jason. Right? Mm-hmm. So if a kid can kill Jason, not to say like, hey, Jason's not as big and bad as he really comes out to be, because it took Tommy a lot to be able to kill Jason. He lost his whole family over it. Yeah. But at the same time, Jason is killable. That's my whole point. Not even Loomis could kill fucking Michael, and Loomis had spent about a decade with him. Yeah. So, like, that's the big difference between the two, in my opinion. It's not just how fast they are, how strong they are, or how quickly they get up. It's also how durable they are and how human-like they are. And the more I keep looking at it and the more I keep thinking about it, Jason is almost too human during the first 4 or 3 or like 2 or 4. He has
absurd strength, but it's just not...
While Michael's, even in that one movie, he's not as human.
Yeah. I just feel like so we can move on just to give my stamp on like what Marva did earlier. I think Jason, you could probably argue, is maybe technically stronger than 78 Michael. Maybe probably. He has better feats, like lifting that guy up with one hand and squeezing his head till it pops.
Michael still hasn't done that.
At least in those movies, you know. So you could argue that he's stronger, but like what you're saying though, I think Michael is just too durable. And not to mention, we've never seen Jason take a bullet in those movies either. Not really. And on top of that, Michael is still somewhat supernatural in that movie, so it's almost kind of an unfair advantage to Jason. Yeah. So I do feel like Michael would take that round. Yeah. But moving on to the next one, this is where it gets interesting. So we're doing you and I had a lot to talk about remake Jason, because you hadn't seen it until I showed it to you.
No, but it is a guilty pleasure of mine.
Yes. And then we have Michael Myers from the remake and the requels. Ugh. Which okay. So Jason in the remake in 2009, he's like
Jared Padalecki.
He's like fucking Rambo, bro. Like this dude has traps laid out in the forest or the woods. He's got like an underground area where he lives, and it's all set up with like knives, traps, animals. Like he hunts animals too. We actually see like dead like shit just hanging around so he can eat. Like this dude is built different. This is not Jason from the original movies. This remake Jason is like He's got handmade weapons, bro. Custom made weapons and shit. Like, this dude is built different, but go ahead.
This is the Jason that I would believe could exist if he didn't have that childlike mentality in movies 2 through 4.
Yes.
If Jason wasn't stuck in his, I guess, 10 or 11-year-old mind.
Right.
And he lived out in the woods. And I guess if you really want to feed into the fan theory that, oh, he was surviving, but without his mom knowing, or his mom had severe dementia and would reset every few hours, every few days, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
This is how I imagine Jason to be like, where he's out on his own. He needs to figure out a way to survive. There's no way that he can go back to society. His mom has kept him around Crystal Lake for far too long for him to even get integrated back in. He's very spiteful. He's very angry because obviously the way that he was brought up, and if you're really using Pamela to your advantage, Pamela will never take responsibility for the fact that Jason drowned and she's blaming others. So therefore, Jason also will find the accountability in others versus himself.
Right.
So you're not wrong. Jason is a force and he's a survivalist in this film. I think this was the first movie where I sat back and I was like, if I run into this motherfucker in the woods, there's no way in hell I'm going to try and fight him back. Yeah. I will just sit there and I will take it. I'll be like, all right, like, I'm good. Just make it painless as you can. I have accepted my death. We're okay.
And this Jason is like a Hulk too, just like the other ones. But not only is he tall, I just looked up the actor. He's 6'5", which, by the way, this actor is actually in Hatchet 3.
Yes.
Which Hatchet, I think the director for that loves to kind of put horror icons in those movies to have Victor Crowley beat them up, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's fun for us. We get to see, like, you know, different horror icons take them on.
Yeah.
But this actor is 6'5".
Huge.
And he's also pretty built in that movie.
Huge.
So, yeah, like this,
you can tell this man has eaten nothing but meat and foraged vegetables and mushrooms and vegetables if he can.
Yeah.
But obviously, because he's moving shit left and right, lumber, building shit, making traps, things along those lines, his muscles are constantly being worked.
Yeah.
So he is built to the next level. And I guess if you really want to fall back to that whole Brock Lesnar reference that you had, I'm sure this Jason has killed animals with his bare hands.
Yes.
Therefore, he has to be obscenely strong. And I'm pretty sure that's why he's able to pick up a man with one hand.
Yeah.
In this movie.
So I'm going to say this right now. I know people are not going to like this, but before we get into the Green trilogy and the requels, I'm going to get over the Halloween remake real quick, which is Rob Zombie.
Oh, it's Rob Zombie's.
That Michael is also big, right?
Yes.
Like, he's fucking huge.
Yes.
And people have called him the unstoppable version of Michael up until I think now the requels came out, you know, because this Michael has a bigger body count.
Yeah.
But Rob Zombie's Michael Myers was huge. He was strong.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have the best feats. In fact, he gets shot once and he's out for like a couple hours. It's enough for like Laurie to escape him for a while.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say it.
I just guess very human.
Yes, I'm just gonna say it. I know you guys are not gonna like this, but
Rob Zombies would get washed.
Yeah, if you put him against this 6'5", 300-pound Jason who is able to scale a house. Remember that shot when they all come out the door looking to see and the camera pans up and he's on top of the house?
Within minutes.
And then he was running after that black dude, the one who went out for his friend, and he was chasing him down and he caught up to him. Within like a minute. And this dude has traps all over the place. He's smart, customized weapons. And to the fact that Jared Padalecki is also pretty big too.
Jared's 6'3". Jared is 6'3", and I think at this point he was at his like peak physical.
Yeah, this is like when he was like his build, like also like in Supernatural 2, one of the later seasons. Yeah. Like he was fucking huge. And this Jason is throwing him up. He's like, there's a moment when they're in like the tunnelway where Jason lives, and he's just like boom, left and right, tossing him around. The two of them are
squaring off, and at first you think Jared's character is winning. Fuck no, bro. Fuck no. This like a fucking ragdoll, Loki versus Hulk type beat. Like just left and right, up and down, all over the place. Jared's getting beat the fuck up.
And the reason why this is a big deal is because no, we don't think like Jared Padalecki should have been able, or the character that Jared was playing is on equal footing of Jason. It's just the fact that Marva knows this a lot. Lifting weight versus picking up humans is a lot different.
It's completely different.
Because of the water that we have in our bodies.
Not even that. People can also like, you can make yourself heavier when you're being lifted,
yeah.
Right? Like you can literally make yourself sink.
And Jason's
not the case.
And Jason's throwing this dude around, bro. Like this. So if Jared is like 250 pounds here, and he's all like, I don't want to say he's all muscle, but he's built to.
This is probably the lowest fat percentage you would see on his body.
And Jason is picking this dude. He's casually throwing around at least 300 pounds if you count in like just casually. And this, I don't know. I just don't know what else to say. I just feel like maybe if you want to play devil's advocate, it'll be the vice versa of the first section, which is maybe Michael is a little bit stronger. Maybe you could argue something like that.
We're talking about Rob Zombies?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like maybe you could argue that Michael is stronger than Jason, but I still...
Are we talking about movie 2, Michael, with Rob Zombie? Because that's where it gets a little freaky and a little supernatural.
Yes, but he also gets his ass beat by those two truckers too. If one of them had pulled out a gun and like shot him in the head, that would have been it.
Probably.
So it's like,
no, Jason wins.
Yeah, if you want to argue that maybe he's a little stronger, okay, but Jason, I think with his tactics, his mindset, like
planning,
like,
survival skills, things along those lines. Because I get it. Like I think Michael in Rob Zombie's second Halloween, Michael's just shown walking on the road, right? In the opening scene. So he's just out. He's also surviving. Yeah. So we're not going to discredit that.
I think that's where the whole play of supernatural comes in, because he's able to move around without eating, it seems like. So
yeah, kind of. I think they still have that homage to him eating a dog or some sort of wild animal.
Do they?
Raw.
Okay.
I think. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I know he does it in movie 1.
But I don't know. I feel like a couple of years of being out and about versus like your whole life being out and about, questionable. And then also, if you really want to play into the supernatural, does Michael's mom come and save him and or warn him during this whole fight? Or is Jason really going to get the better of him within those few minutes before mom can step in?
Yeah, because the mom was guiding him throughout movie 2. So is Jason taking on the mom and Michael, or is it just Michael?
Because I get it. Jason can't touch the mom, but at the same time, mom influences Michael to move around and do things, right? So I guess very similar to Jason, where Pamela's constantly whispering in his ear.
Maybe,
the ghost of Pamela, if you will.
Yeah.
So who would win in the end? I'm still leaning towards Jason with this one. Because I don't see anybody of the size of almost Michael's size being tossed around the way that Jason tosses around Jared Padalecki.
There's also that scene where when Michael gets his jumpsuit in the 07 remake, where he gets his suit from that big trucker.
Yeah. And
that trucker was kind of holding his own too. And I would have to wonder if like Michael didn't spring up on him while he was taking his shit, if maybe it would have been a more even fight.
Probably. Because when you're taking your shit, you're very vulnerable. I mean, even with dogs, like that's why they're always looking around, making sure the owner's nearby, because you can't really, you can stop, but it's very uncomfortable when you go whoop.
Yeah. So I just feel
like...
To your point, I feel like if you want to give the strength advantage to Michael, just maybe just due to this little bit of a size difference, since that Michael was so big, then maybe. But I feel like this Jason is just way too tactical. He's just way too smart.
He seems to think on his feet more, because Michael, even in movie 2, and I'm sorry to interrupt, like,
you're fine.
It almost seems like as if the mom's telling him like, okay, kill him, kill her, go after them. But if she doesn't give the command, it's not like he won't do it. It almost seems like he doesn't have the drive to do it as hard or as brutally as whenever the mom's directing.
It's almost like he's like an android, and he only moves and activates when his mom tells him to do something.
Like, he'll still do it, but he won't do it to the extent that he does whenever the mom gives the command.
Yeah, exactly.
But Jason just does it because he's fucking pissed. Or wants to be left alone, or all the above.
So I think you and I are on the same boat here, that 09 Jason would beat the remakes of
Rob
Halloween.
Zombies, at least.
Yeah, Rob Zombies. So let's get into the Green Trilogy. Now, this is where it's interesting, because Michael is obviously supernatural in this. There's no 50-50. Like, there is a supernatural entity.
This is where you get to the 80-20, 90-10 area.
And I guess I'm just going to go ahead and say this. Do you feel like Jason has... I feel like Jason has the advantage in terms of survival skills and tactical skills. But strength-wise, I think it becomes a little bit different. And so does maybe even speed. Well, how do you feel? And that's... I'm not even going to get into the whole you get stronger. We'll get into that in a second. I'm just talking about like strength and speed.
If we're taking... Okay. I feel like the best way for me to give you an answer is if I go movie by movie for the Green Trilogy. Because I only have one version of Jason with the remake.
Yeah.
But I have 3 versions of Michael in the ongoing Green Trilogy.
It's a little unfair, yeah.
So if I'm doing 2018 Michael versus Jason from the remake, what year was it?
09.
09, so I guess Jason's 09 remake. I would say Jason would give a good fight, but he would be one of the few to keep Michael down for a long period of time. Don't think he would kill Michael. Michael would win by like the skin on his teeth, almost. And the thing that's making me say Michael can still hold a candle to Jason in this point in time, because yes, he's smart, like Jason's smart. He, like you said, build traps, builds cages, snares, like can scale a whole building within a few minutes. However, what kind of force do you need to stomp a man's head in with one go?
That's true. Yeah. This Michael's also, granted, Michael's actor is a pretty big guy, but he's not 6'5" big.
No.
So there would be a size difference between the two.
There would be.
But at the same time, though, this Michael has also lifted up people with...
very easily.
Yeah. Like, we see him do the exact same kill from 78.
Yes.
With the blonde girl's boyfriend in 2018, where he stabs him and he lifts him up on the wall. So the knife's holding up this dude.
Yeah.
We then see him lift up a couple people and kills the guy that he stabs with in his, the underarm and everything. I believe there's even a good feat there where he squeezes his eyes out, right? Or like he squeezes his head.
I'm still on 2018 only.
Oh,
but
okay.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I think gouging somebody's eyes doesn't take much strength.
I thought he squeezed the eyes out. Or am I thinking of it wrong? No, I think
he gouges them out. He
okay.
presses in to make them bleed and then gouges them out. But he doesn't gouge them out in a way where like the eye pop out. It almost like the eyes turn into jelly as he's squeezing.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking of a different feat. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, you were what were you agreeing with me that Michael was still in 28, like just 2018 Michael and 09 Jason? Or were you going the opposite way?
I feel like skin of his teeth, probably.
Michael was still in by the skin of his teeth.
I also feel like even though Jason has survivalist skills on him, I think Michael would probably be smarter than Jason, just based off of...
He's more conniving in this film for sure.
Especially if you go off of the 78 director's cut, which ties into 2018, that Michael premeditated and planned his escape, so it wasn't like a spontaneous thing like we kind of thought it was in movie 78.
Mm-hmm.
So he's outsmarted a lot of psychiatrists and doctors, and so I just feel like Michael probably is a little bit smarter than him, and that could help him in a fight because being smart also helps a lot. Yeah. But I think by the skin of his teeth he would win. So
yeah. If we're doing kills, Michael and Jason, I'm sorry, Michael's gonna mollywop. Michael's gonna mollywop because at this point he's caught. You're adding the bodies that he's caught in 2018 plus the bodies he's caught in kills, because this is all in one night. I get it. The movies were released like 2 or 3 years, 2 years apart from each other, but it still encapsulates one night, so 12 hours. Let's say 24 hours for argument's sake, right? So Michael wins, especially after that whole sparring scene, and you have the whole town coming in, beating him down, stabbing him, even Laurie's daughter, Karen, like stabbing him in the neck. Michael still gets up. He lets Karen walk away, but he still gets up. Like as if nothing fucking happened. If the same were to happen to Jason, he would not be able to get up because he's still human.
Yeah.
He's a very strong human, but Michael will win in the end. At this point, I feel like he's reached that 80-20 level where he really is a force. He really is supernatural. It does not matter how many times you get him down. He will get right back up.
I think Michael in movie kills, specifically towards the end, is probably the strongest Michael that we have probably seen, aside from one other one, which we'll get into. But he definitely has the biggest body count in that movie. He took out like a whole
mob.
Mob, and then he also took out the fire department too in the beginning. The
entire fire department. Yeah. I think,
or at least most of them anyway. So
no, all of them.
All of them.
All of them. It was the police coming in and saying, "Shit, look what happened," and that's when they called it in, and that's when they locked down. Because you also have to keep in mind, firemen wear about 40 pounds worth of gear.
Yeah,
and that's why they have to be in such peak physical shape. Michael still figures out a way to lift a body up with a handsaw on top of it. So you're getting an average human man. Wait, let's say 180 plus 40 makes it 220. Plus the handsaw. Let's say the handsaw is like 65, 70 pounds. So 220 plus 70 makes it 290. Almost 300. And all he does is just go up.
Yeah.
He does not strain. He does not bend his knees. It's just arms up, like as if he's shoveling.
There isn't no put your legs in it. He's not squatting. No. Like this is...
Because if we're also using like strength as another feat, even though 09's Jason is throwing Padalecki around left and right, you can see the effort that he's putting in tossing this man left to right.
Yeah.
There's not much effort placed whenever Jason's lifting up the firefighter with the handsaw in his hand as well. Not only that, but he's able to, I guess, like almost like axe through these tempered glass. And tempered glass is very difficult to break. Tempered glass is the glass in front of the firefighters' helmets, for those of you who don't know.
I mean, there's also the big feat that you always bring up, which is the water hose that he walks through.
And the water hose, dude. Okay, so I think it was the first or the second time you and I were watching this film, and I paused it. I was like, all right, you and I need to talk about this, because like I don't think a lot of people realize just how much force a fire hose has. Yeah. And I only know this because when I was in grade school, looking back at it, I don't think this was the smartest idea with my grade school. They brought firemen out to our school.
They had a couple times too at my school.
Yeah. And because it was so hot in Texas, this is the time when I was living in Texas, they would have water weeks. So we would have a bunch of like outdoor sports and like just a whole bunch of fun outside with water, be it with kiddie pools, water balloons, whatever you name it. And one of the final days would involve the firefighters coming around and attaching the hose to the fire hydrant and just letting it go. Yeah. Right? So in the beginning, they would always have it pointing up and the water would be coming back down. So it felt like rain, waterfall, whatever it may be. And then as you got older, the older kids would be able to try and quote unquote withstand the force of the fire hose. And this is going to get really dark for a second, and I'm going to dip into politics for like 20 seconds. You see what was it? This is around the time where I had recently learned about segregation, the big civil rights movements, things along those lines. So I had seen videos of law enforcement and firefighters, unfortunately, using fire hoses to hose down individuals, specifically Black folk who were fighting for their civil rights, or anybody who sided with the civil rights movement.
Yeah, I've seen clips of that.
And you see people literally being swept off their feet. Me as a child, I was like, bro, why don't you just stand up? It didn't make sense. I ate my own words by fourth grade. You? They had the standoff for the older kids, 4th and 5th graders. Parents had to sign a disclosure in order for it to happen. That disclosure also involved, and I don't think my parents actually read the details of it, also included that, hey, if your kid volunteers to go to the standoff, if you will, we are not responsible for any injuries sustained.
Your mom and dad signed that?
They didn't read the details. They just signed. I was like, this is for Water Week. Sign it, please. Ran away, right? So 4th grade comes around, and obviously, like, all the cool kids are lining up to do it because they want to prove a point. And I was like, fuck it. Like, this is my initiation because I was always the dork, the dweeb. I was the kid who was in the ESL classes until 5th grade. So nobody really wanted to talk to me because they were convinced my English wasn't that good. And in all honesty, it wasn't, because time came to reading out loud and I would literally read like this, word for word. Except I would like not be able to pronounce things all too well. So I think that also kind of feeds into me talking so fast as I do today. It's almost like a subconscious like thing in my head.
Right.
But long story short, we line up for the fire hose and the firemen are turning it on full force, one by one. And the test is to see how close you can get before you get knocked off your feet. And I'm watching, and I'm closer to the end because I'm trying to figure out a strategy. I'm trying to play it smart here. I think I'm the second or third to last to do it. And, everybody's getting blown away after a certain point, a certain threshold. And I'm telling myself, like, bro, y'all are so weak. It's just water. It's okay.
Yeah, weak as fuck.
Exactly. Mind you, it's my turn. They turn on the hose. And far away, I'm like, oh, shit, I got this. It's fine. As I'm walking closer, I feel more force. And it's not just the force either, MJ. It's the feeling of almost like your skin being ripped apart off of your body.
I believe it, bro.
The amount of force that this fire hose had was insane. And I made it maybe like a step further than most kids. But after a certain point, when I tried taking that second step, I lost balance and I fell on my ass hard. And when I rolled away, because I couldn't really get up because the hose was still going, I rolled away to get back up. My skin was red. I think I was like at least 20 feet away from like the spout. So me being like the 60, 70 pound or 70, 80 pound kid, right, who gets literally blown away by the fire hose, you're also putting in, like factoring in people from the civil rights movement, grown men, grown women who are at least over 100 pounds, also being blown away by the force of the fire hose. Put Michael Myers into this whole situation. He's not stunned. First of all, he feels no pain. Second of all, he's walking straight towards the hose.
Doesn't he walk all the way up to it?
All the way up to it. And he does not waver. So you're telling me that he doesn't feel this shit? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I had a bodysuit on. They had us wear bodysuits for this.
Yeah, Halloween Kills Michael Myers is built different, bro.
So, like, what, like, literally, what the fuck? He, like, the amount of strength, the amount of mental capacity that you need to have, the amount of, like, drive you need to have to be able to come full force to a fire hose. And mind you, whenever I rolled away, the fireman told me, hey, this was only at 75%. I was so fucking offended. So the teacher, and I looked at them, I'm like, can you do 100? A teacher, like, they had to look at the teachers, and the teacher was like, sure, but only kids of, like, certain heights can do it. And I was like, okay, I'll be one of the few. And I had 2 or 3 other people come with me. I couldn't even make it 4 steps before I was blown away by 100%. 4 steps.
So you're even farther back than 20
I was farther
feet.
back whenever they were doing it at 100. So I'm sure they were doing it at 100 whenever it came to Lori's house being burned down. So who the fuck is Michael who can walk up without getting thrown off left and right by the hose, grab it, yank it out of the fireman's hand and be like, nah, fuck this, kill him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sorry, Jason. Michael's gonna eat you up and then some.
I guess ends really ain't worth talking about because Michael's weak in that movie.
I'll still talk about it. I mean, if you're constantly talking about the left and right back and forth of like whether or not Michael really is strong, is he not? Does he encapsulate evil? Does he not? Is Corey siphoning off the evil that drives Michael? Or once Corey dies? Because I noticed this, and this is something that you and I didn't really talk about. When Corey dies, Michael almost comes back. Did you notice?
Yeah.
So it almost seems like Corey was siphoning off whatever kind of power Michael had.
Yeah, because Michael is... So, I guess the only issue with ends Michael is we know that he's not that strong in the beginning of the movie. It's been like 2 or 3 years
since he's killed. Yeah.
We know like the whole time skip. COVID happened and Haddonfield and everything, right?
Yeah.
And we know that whatever little energy he's getting to live off of is like the random people that go missing every now and then around there.
It's almost like as if he's killing to survive, not killing to live.
So my question is, how strong was Corey then to overpower and take the mask off of Michael in that one scene. Because if that's the case, then that Michael that got overpowered by Corey, I'm sorry, but Jason's
gonna tear him apart.
Yeah, he's washing him. So
okay, if we're going based off of the idea that I just presented a couple minutes ago, and Corey is siphoning off the evil.
Yeah.
There is also this underlying tone that Haddonfield always needs an outlet for their evil.
For whatever fucking reason, yeah.
So I guess Haddonfield seems to emulate this evil, but it needs to be contained in one body, right?
Yeah.
What if it's a curse, if it's like just the idea of evil itself, whatever it may be, whatever you want to call it. I don't think it's fully identified and ends, and that's fine. I'm okay with it.
Very Christine-esque, which is based on a Stephen King story, and Stephen King is known for using like towns as like some sort of like conduit for like evil or something like that. It's interesting because someone made that comparison actually, that like ends is a lot like Christine if you watch it. So
which makes sense. So I guess my whole point is Corey, because of the opening scene, you know, the kid splattering onto the floor after falling from the third floor, him being almost like an outlet since Michael has disappeared, because it's been 2 or 3 years since Michael has disappeared. We see people actually going out in the beginning of the movie celebrating Halloween after the big scare. So I guess at least 1 year has passed from where Michael has disappeared, if you will. So put all this into perspective. Corey is the outlet. We, not long before, or not too close to the fight between Corey and Michael, he was bullied, like Laurie got involved. Laurie also makes a comment that seems to be like, I'm almost connected to this evil or drawn to this evil, if you will, knowingly or otherwise. So her involvement could have also catalyzed Corey becoming more encapsulated in evil and siphoning more off of it, right? This is also whenever he's really getting into Laurie's granddaughter. Name currently has escaped my head, but it's fine. Allison. There you go. So obviously, like, he seems to be feeding off of that discourse that the two of them are having with how quickly Allison is falling in love with Corey. Like, sure, Laurie started it, but I'm sure she didn't expect for Allison to fall head over heels the way that she did. Yeah. So I think at this point, Corey has more of the evil within him because you also have the rage that he has towards his mother, the appreciation towards his, I guess, fatherly figure, but also at the same time, he seems to hold this resentment towards him too. Yeah. So you have all this like brewing and emulating and like bubbling within Corey. So it does kind of explain why he could overpower Michael. And what I mean by that is this. Michael hasn't really killed unless it's to keep him going. Yeah. It's not at his peak. Corey has been the main focus of being the scapegoat of the town. So when you have Michael, who at one point all the fear, all the hatred, all the negative emotions was being directed at, plus all the kills, he was at his peak. Right. Corey hasn't killed yet, but he has everything else.
That's true.
So he was up there. And because Michael only had the kills and nothing else, nobody was really worrying about him anymore, not even Laurie. How could he fight against Corey, who seems to be the main concern of the town? We even have a group of high schoolers bullying him and like making him shake and like shudder into a corner. So clearly he's the talk of the town. Yeah. So that's where I feel like and I'm really playing devil's advocate here, because in all honesty, like looking at the scene, it took 3 or 4 watches for me to be like, okay, well, I guess I can rationalize it now. It makes sense. First time, I was so fucking pissed. I wanted to walk out of the theaters after that scene. But I told myself, you know what? I've put a lot of time.
I mean, we held out after that scene. Yeah,
we got to finish this, and we did.
And finally, I think actually it's not the best of the 3, but you and I actually like don't hate it as much as other people do, though.
No, I think you and I also did a lot of research. We also found out that this movie is very much a love letter to all the different spin-offs and franchises that Halloween had. So I see a lot of the homages, the tip of the hats to them. So I understand that love letter. And now as I watch it more, I pick up on more cues and I'm able to rationalize things a little bit more. So that's where I guess that's why I feel like Corey overpowering Michael isn't too much of an ass pull as people like to make it seem. But this is also me really fine picking at the details and being like, okay, well, for argument's sake, let's say this.
Well, to get back to the topic, I would probably say that overall, I don't see Halloween Ends Michael being stronger than
No.
2018 Michael.
No.
So if 2018 Michael barely wins by the skin of his teeth, then I don't see Ends beating.
No, he wouldn't make it.
Yeah, he lost to a Lori who was unprepared for a fight with him, and
It would be an entertaining fight. It would be fun to see Michael being tossed around left and right. But
yeah, because even Lori kind of, I don't want to say Lori tosses him around, but like when they're like going at each other, they're both like hitting the counters and
their weights are being tossed around
yeah,
left and right.
So even though maybe you could say Michael is around the strength of like someone his size should be, maybe a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
Lori still like beat him with like barely any weapons, no preparation, like
Yeah.
you know. And this is a Lori after what, settling down for a couple of years,
For 3 years, about So Jason 09, Jason would win.
I feel like that sums that up, but this is the fun part. Now I'm sure you're wondering, how come Marvelous and MJ discussed the remakes and requels before the other part of their franchises? And that's because I feel like these are a little bit more fun to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
We finally have made it to Zombie Jason, probably the most notable Jason of the franchise that everyone talks about. When people think of Jason Voorhees, they're not thinking of Potato Sack Jason. They're not thinking of the Jason who got killed by Tommy. They're thinking of the unstoppable, the man who could get his body blown up and he still survives. You haven't seen that movie yet.
I have not.
This Jason is unfucking stoppable. He's literally dead.
5 and on.
He was brought back in movie 6 by a lightning strike when Tommy tried to dig him up again.
Just kidding, 6 and on. I said that so with my chest out and everything.
5 is the one with the paramedic.
Yeah. I know. Sorry, guys.
I didn't want to correct you. I know what you meant. So 6, he gets brought back with a lightning strike, and he just goes on a tear. This guy is showing like vampire levels of strength of just like punching people, pulling their hearts out. One swing, he's chopping people in half.
Yeah.
He's doing all sorts of shit. He's breaking the hoods of cars. He's in one comic book that actually, I don't know if it's fully canon, but it is brought up a lot about what Jason does in between the movies.
Yeah.
He lifts a tree up.
From the roots?
Yeah. Like, this motherfucker is different.
On some Edward Cullen shit?
This motherfucker is different, bro.
Well, damn.
Like, this dude is different.
Sorry, Michael.
Now we have Michael Myers' Curse of Thorn, which if you're not counting the requel Michael, this is probably the closest you're gonna get to a full-blown supernatural witchy ritual Michael, right? Like, this is
now we get a reason for all the evil that's emanating out of Haddonfield.
And why all the evil is constantly on him. And also, too, just to get this out of the way, the elephant in the room, this is the biggest feat that any Michael has, which is why it's always hard for me to say, oh, Halloween 4 and on Michael will lose to requel Michael, is because of this. Since Halloween 4, 5, and 6 pick up after 2, Halloween 2 from 81, that Michael gets blown up in a room.
Yep.
And he survives that explosion.
So does Loomis.
So does Loomis. The Loomis one's a little weird.
These people are built different.
So Michael's feat of surviving that explosion is insane.
Yeah.
I think they kind of retcon it, and we're supposed to believe that Loomis made it out of the room before the explosion went off. Which is why only like half of his is messed up.
Yeah.
Even though in the movie he definitely was still in that room with Michael.
Yeah.
But we'll overlook it.
It's okay. I'll my eyes will glaze over for just that moment.
But Michael for sure took that entire explosion on.
Yes.
And he still survives.
Yes.
And he's still walking around in 4, 5, and 6.
Yes.
Stronger than ever. Bigger than ever. This is the movie where I forgot.
I think by 6 he's his biggest.
Yes. There's a fun fact for some of the people who don't know that a lot of people have mentioned as far as headcanon goes. I don't know if there's any direct quote from anybody that, confirms this, but this is a very much a common headcanon amongst many fans, is that so much evil from the Thorn curse is being built up in Michael that's why he looks so big
and so bulky
in movie 6, is because he's constantly just gathering more evil and more.
And it's not just him, it's also the cult feeding into him too.
Yes. So he's constantly just getting bigger and badder. This is the movie where he lifts people up with one hand. This is also the movie where he crushes that one dude's skull in movie 4. Just pops it when he lifts him up. It's the guy with the shotgun who's saying, like, get out of here, Rachel, that dude. Yeah. So this Michael is insane, showing similar feats to that of Zombie Jason.
Yeah.
Maybe not the tree one. No. But yeah, this dude is built different. I think even the father in movie 6, Laurie Strode's uncle, that dude is big when he comes back. And I don't mean, I hate to sound like an asshole, but he's big. Like, the dude is definitely a lot of weight on him. He's also a tall dude. Michael also lifts him up in the laundry room when he kills him.
With no effort.
No effort. Yeah. So this Michael, again, just insanely different. These are probably the 2 closest supernatural characters, again, if we're not counting the requel Michael. Who do you think wins this one?
Honestly, I feel like it'll come out a draw. And what I mean by that...
I don't think so, but I'll let you talk.
Is, and you're a little bit more familiar than the Thor trilogy than I am. In my mind, you know that photo of the anaconda and the gator eating each other?
Yeah.
They're both like half dead but half alive.
Yeah.
That's what I see.
That's what you say.
So the 2 of them are literally going to be hacking at each other, like hacking away, but nobody's going to give in. Because the way that I remember Michael in the Thorn trilogy is that, okay, he was an unstoppable force before. Whoa. But now, he's a force like no other. He's nightmare fuel, if you will. Zombie Jason, is also nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
But if we're also sprinkling in the fact that Jason can pick up a tree and just kind of toss it around like as if it's a stick.
There's a funny image in my head that kind of shows like...
I still think it's going to be the Gator Anaconda situation where the 2 of them are just like hacking at each other at the same time and nobody's really like giving up. They're both falling to their knees at the same time. And then I don't think either of them die, but it's just like almost like a bloodletting, if you will.
You know those wacky cartoons where like it'll show a character lifting one up and he swings them?
Yeah.
That's what I imagine like Jason could do to Michael with that tree trunk feat. But that's only if you're really counting the comic book feats.
Yeah.
You know, which that's up to you if you want to do that. If you want to do that, then yeah, it gets kind of hilarious where maybe Michael can't die, but Jason will just be tossing him from like point A to point B.
So yeah, I guess for me it's a draw, but what about you? You can go ahead.
So if we're not counting the comic book feats, I feel like it's a closer of a fight.
Yeah.
The comic book feats get a little ridiculous because the tree one is just one of them. There's plenty of other ones too.
Oh, shit.
Like I think there's a car feat where he lifts a car too. Like so, like Jason can lift tons in the comics, like Zombie Jason, anyways. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, then obviously Michael, I don't think really can fuck with that. Even if you can't kill Curse of Thorn Michael, he's gonna be getting fucked up, you know,
torn apart.
Yeah, torn apart. But that's the interesting thing is that I can't remember if there's a quote or not, but can Curse of Thorn Michael even be killed? Because if he can't be killed, that could explain why he survived that explosion. Like, is it some sort of like he can't be killed unless he completes his ritual? Like he completes the killing of his family members, maybe?
I don't know. And that's why I feel like I'd say you know a little bit more about this than I do, because it's almost implied that he needs to fulfill his life mission, but we don't know what it is until movie 6 when all the strings are like finally knotted together and you can see everything lining up, right? So I feel like...
Because Michael does survive both versions, the theatrical cut and the director's cut. They're different ways of him surviving, but again, he doesn't die at the end.
Yeah, so if you really want to feed into the whole Thorn idea, then I guess the Cloaked Man is what they call him?
Yeah.
The Cloaked Man had a hand in ensuring Michael's survival. Yeah. Not necessarily that Michael survived. So I guess his main focus was that because Michael still hasn't passed the mark, the Thorn mark, if you will.
Right.
The Cloaked Man has to save him.
That could be a thing, yeah.
But let's say Cloaked Man goes up against Zombie Jason. Zombie Jason's just gonna tear him up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. That was such a failed plot point. I thought the Cloak Man was going to be a lot cooler.
I did too. I felt a lot of hype, and then when the time came, I was like,
"Oh, he's just a doctor."
That's it.
We've been doing with his homeboy. Like that's
it. Like I get it. It's a bit of a plot twist, but okay.
I will say this though, with the Curse of Thorn Michael versus this Jason, is that we do see Jason go up against a character who has, I guess, psychic abilities or telekinetic abilities and
telekinesis.
Telekinesis.
I've barely finished that movie once.
And Jason does somewhat survive that fight. So I don't know. I feel like there's just a little bit more going for zombie Jason.
Probably.
Plus, especially since even if you kill zombie Jason, he literally can just take over your body with his essence. Like that's
shortly after.
That's the movie Jason Goes to Hell, which you haven't seen yet.
Nope, not
yet. I don't know. I think I might just have to go with zombie Jason on this.
By all means.
On this one.
I think I'm in the same.
The issue though is though if Michael can't be killed, then the story's a little bit different, and I'll go with the draw. But if I'm going off the fact that he can be killed, and maybe it was just certain circumstances that saved him, like the Cloak Man, then Jason will probably win this. Well.
Yeah, and because I haven't seen the later films of Jason, like when he goes to hell, to space, all that kind of shit, I haven't even fully finished the one with the telekinesis. So I'm going based off of what I know is I'm gonna fight Jason. That's why I say it's a draw. So that you know a little bit more about this than I do, not just with not just with the Thorn trilogy, Michael, but also
the later
zombie Jason.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
There's it, because we're also forgetting like that crazy ass speed feat that Jason swims from wherever the fuck they are in the ocean to Manhattan, and he was actually able to get there quicker than the boat that they were on. So that's
fast.
Yeah, I don't.
That's fucking fast.
I don't. Yeah.
Not even like zombies can walk through water that quickly. So clearly he got some sort of like weird motorboat on his butt or something.
So like Jason's a little. That's why I feel like it's kind of hard for me to say Michael wins, because the movie's gonna get so cartoony that it's hard for me to like say Michael would win with a straight face. Like I feel like Jason has to win, but if Michael can't be killed, though, I think that's the caveat there. I think that's the draw. You know? So
understood. So I guess you say Jason wins.
Yeah.
And I say draw for this one. So first time we're on different ends.
Yeah.
Nice.
So what do you guys think about Jason versus Michael? What do y'all think about the overarching narrative of them? Because they're two completely different characters.
They are.
One is a guy who is literally just a supernatural force and like the wind, like John Carpenter called him, right? And then one guy is someone who was bullied, and he wants you to
beast mode.
Yeah, he wants you to leave him alone, bro. Like stop going to his lake.
Yeah, just stop coming around him. Leave him alone. He wants to be the fucking loner that everybody wishes they could be. Me.
Doesn't want to pay bills. Yeah, so
just wants to live off the land and be okay.
He doesn't go looking for trouble, man.
Trouble comes looking for him.
Yep. So
no, I'm just kidding.
I always make that joke too, that he's like the guy who just wants to be left alone.
No, he's like, leave me the fuck alone, bro. All these horny ass kids show up, and all he wants to do is just live his life.
Littering, leaving beer cans on his front yard, bro, and everything.
Talking shit about him too. God
I know, right? Talking shit about him too. Right?
Yeah, they're like, did you guys hear? There was a killer out there. But just so you know, the person that they're accusing of the killer is a kid who drowned in the lake like 20 years ago. How stupid is that?
You know those. Bro,
I get mad.
You know those memes on TikTok of like what are those? Like Michael picked the wrong house, and like Michael, it shows like a guy wearing the Michael mask, and he's like listening to these two couples fight. Yeah. So he's like, oh my God.
Nope.
And he closes the door and walks away.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like Jason just casually walking in the woods, and someone's like, "Do you hear about that dumb kid that drowned?" He's like, "What?"
I'm that dumb kid. Hello? Dumb kid. Hello?
What are you talking about?
Walks up with this machete. All right. Let's get the show on the road.
So offended, right? Just like, what the? I didn't do nothing to you.
Yeah.
But
how dare you? Time to pay up.
But overall, let us know what you think. Not just about, strength-wise, but also narratives, like I just said. They're two completely different characters, but both provide the same entertainment. And
do you guys also have counter arguments to what we said? Because MJ and I agreed for the first two, but the last one we clearly didn't.
Y'all also might disagree with us too. I mean, I know a lot of people love the Rob Zombie Michael for being like a just brute force. So maybe
By all means.
maybe they think he wins.
Yeah,
you
just let me know.
So-
Because I very much went like psychoanalysis-esque in the back of my mind thinking about Rob Zombie Michael. But I also have a psych degree, that's why. Sorry, guys. But yeah, let me know. Let us know, because I really want to see. Do you guys agree with all the different like subcategories that we made? Do you have an underlying idea of whether or not like Rob Zombie, or not even Rob Zombie, if Michael and Jason would win? Because I guess overall, if we're doing Michael and Jason, I would say Jason overall, like movies 1 through, what's the last movie of the Friday 13th? 10, 11, 12?
10 or 11, I think.
10 or 11. So movies 1 through 11, Jason would win. And like Michael Myers, including all the different branches of the like Thorn trilogy, original trilogy, Green trilogy included, I would say Jason over Michael.
Yeah, I think it's just easier for casual people to say just Jason wins because it just makes sense. Jason's always coming back. Jason also had a longer franchise.
Yeah.
Like when Michael comes back, it's usually because the movies are split in different timelines. Like,
Yeah.
you know, different
It's
variants.
not a continuous timeline.
Jason always gets back, whether it takes him days, like you and I said,
Or years.
or years. He still always comes back.
Yeah.
So it's the same Jason too.
Yeah.
So it's like,
But you let us know. If you think like overall Michael would win, let us know why. If you think the subcategories it's different, again, let us know why. I always like hearing counter arguments. I always like being told that I'm wrong, and I like listening to the reasons why you think I'm wrong.
we just love feedback.
Yeah,
That's
by all
easy.
means.
So let us know down below. And thank you as always for tuning in to the Slashers and Sync podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.
Bye guys.